So we got this car sometime in September last year. But when we started to talk about the car, I think there was some time in June, July, I think it was in winter, somewhere around that time. And I remember being shown the engine. What had happened, you know, just like many, how most projects start, they start with maybe somebody blowing up a motor, and then, you know, they start to dream about what are they going to do, and they just go all out. That's pretty much, I think, how the story of this project came, because I think he had a problem with his original motor that comes in this Altezza. It was a 3SG, the 3S engine, and it blew up, or they, not blew up, but essentially the timing belt snapped, and then you know what happens. I mean, if you've owned a 3S, you know what happens when a timing belt snaps. So he had to replace the motor, and you know, he just abandoned replacing the motor altogether, and he dreamt about maybe trying to put together a V8, and then he bought a V8 from this big V8 motor. Unfortunately for him, at the time when he tried to get somebody to do it, and I think this engine sat for like something like almost 2 years, the body there and the engine there, and the guys who were trying to make this a reality, you know, just kept on telling him, oh, buy this, buy this, buy this, buy that, and he kept on buying stuff and buying stuff, but the thing wasn't moving forward. It wasn't going anywhere. So sometime, I think in winter last year, early winter, he approached me and said, look, I've heard about what you guys have done with your projects, and I've got a project that's sitting. Are you able to assist me? Now, normally I don't take people's projects, but at the time, me and my guys, we had completed the brevis, you know, we had completed most of our projects here, and we were like, look, we don't have much to do in terms of projects. So we then decided, you know what, let's take it. Let's see how this goes. So I remember going to where the body was and where the engine was, and I remember looking at the state, the condition where the engine was, and I was very cross just seeing this motor sitting in the sun. You know, the sun is being beat by the sun, and you can see that it's also been affected by the rains and so forth. It's really essentially exposed to the elements. And I remember telling and saying, look, immediately find money, go buy plastic, just cover it. At least cover it. That's the least that you can do, because I can see the ECUs are there, the control modules, everything is there. And you're telling me it's being hit by the sun. It's also, you know, rain is falling on it, and, you know, you guys are doing nothing about it. And you can see inside the exhaust there was a little bit of soil that had actually gone into the exhaust, like the exhaust ports, because there wasn't the manifolds there. So at the time, because I'd sort of accepted to say, you know, we can take it. But then seeing the engine, I mean, exposed to elements, at that point I started to question, is this really a good idea? Did I really make a good decision to try to take this guy's project? But anyways, here we are. So later on, I think sometime in September, because we just gave him a list, buy this, buy this, buy this and that. And then after you've bought all that stuff, then you can bring it to us and we can start to put the car together. So essentially it didn't have an exhaust. What else did it not have? I think the exhaust, mainly the exhaust. That's what it didn't have. So when he bought a full exhaust with catalysts in Dubai, it came. So then we knew I didn't want to do the process of welding a custom exhaust from nothing. I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to put what was factory, because it's running a factory ECU. And then we see how the car behaves. Because right off the bat, if you just start by modifying a car, sometimes you never know. When you start having problems troubleshooting it, you never know, is it because of the mods that you made, or is it because of a problem that you need to take care of? So we just wanted to start with its original equipment, original items. So it had essentially everything. The ECU, it had the dash wiring, it had the steering locks were there. It had the funny button that you press. I mean, not the funny, but the Toyota buttons that you press in your later model cars. It had even the key. He had that as well. He also had, what else? Although we never ended up using all that stuff because it became excess, it had a lot of stuff. That's what I want to say. Even the pump, the original fuel pump that it comes with, it also had that. So all we had to do was to adapt all that stuff to make it, to put it into the Altezza. That's pretty much what we did. So the biggest hurdle that we had was getting the motor to actually fit. Because if you see the pictures, you see that it is a massive motor. And there was no way it was going to fit because, again, it is a rear sump kind of, not even a rear sump, it's actually a mid sump. So where the sump is where the cross member is supposed to go across the two sides of the vehicle. So getting it to sit, getting it into the car was going to be an impossible task because even if you're going to make it sit higher, it meant the transmission wouldn't go in. So we ended up modifying the cross member. We ended up cutting it a little bit and modifying it so that the sump actually sits. So now it sits, and also we had a challenge with the steering. We had to lower it a little bit just to allow it to sit as well. So after that has been done, you know, the motor sits and the gearbox comes in. The gearbox is a massive piece of hardware, and just to get it in, there was a little bit of persuasion that we had to do on the tunnel using a dear friend of ours, the 4-pound hammer. So yeah, that did work, and you know, we're not a stranger to that. We've done that on, I mean, on the Mark II. We've done that on the Brevis, just to allow those massive BMW gearboxes to fit. So having have done that, the motor set. And we had to make some custom brackets, some custom motor mounts. And thanks to our fabricator, we managed to make them. We managed to make high quality motor mounts, and that's what it essentially uses. So after the motor really set, the goal there was to make it start. Another thing I want to mention is the amount of cleaning that we had to undergo to get it ready, to just get the engine ready. Remember I mentioned that it was sitting outside where it was exposed to the elements. So we not just cleaning the outside, but we also opened the bottom end, the bottom part of the motor. And yes, there were traces of water because water was getting in and so forth and so forth. Had we just gone ahead to just, you know, put it together and start it, that was going to cause issues for us. So we had to prepare the motor by opening the underside of it, ensuring that it looks good, really. I mean, there's no bearing materials in the sump. Looking at also just making sure that there's no water essentially at the bottom end, and we went through that process and we were very happy. The next thing obviously was to replace his fluids, because, and this is one thing that we do here, if we are ever going to do an engine swap, we have to open the motor, we have to open the bottom end, we have to open as much as we can, try to assess the condition of the motor before going on ahead. You can imagine, because you can imagine putting the motor 30 times in and out of a chassis, marking, putting it back, marking, all to create those motor mounts, everything, and all just to realize that, you know what, the engine is never going to start because it's seized up, or maybe it has got chunks of metal inside of it. I mean, that's not a good outcome. So, you know, this is something that we actually do, that we make sure that we actually do before we really embark on such a project. So when we got the motor to sit, when we got the motor to actually rest nicely in the engine, obviously you have to make sure that when it sits, you have to make sure that you know, it's not close to the frame itself, as when it starts to run, you might have issues of vibration and so forth. So we really made a good job. We really did a good job there in making those motor mounts, which has got the factory rubber bushings, and which just makes the engine not touch the body in any ways whatsoever. So even the transmission as well, we had to put some custom brackets there to make sure that I didn't want to try and get your aftermarket as well. I didn't want to try to go into the aftermarket to get aftermarket bushings, because I always feel like the stuff that comes from the OEM guys is usually very good. It's usually meant to last a very long time of the vehicle. So, you know, trying to find some aftermarket bushings and so forth. Yes, it is easy sometimes, but the longevity is quite questionable. If it's a car that you intend to probably build and maybe build and sell or something, or it becomes somebody's problems anyways. But if it's not something that you want to keep for a long time, then yes, maybe you can go with aftermarket bits and so forth. But I try to avoid that because I'm also thinking of longevity. As you already know, I myself, I've got an Altezza, which has got a 1JZ. I've owned that car for 5 years now. This Altezza is also joining, is pretty much joining the club of rebels that we've done here. So these are cars which are reliable. They can still be driven for a length, for any length of journey reliably. So I'm thinking he's probably going to use it as a daily. He can use it as a daily. He can use it as a trek car, whichever way that he intends to use it for. But whatever that he whatever that he's going to use it, we don't want him to have issues because we put things which are not going to last a long time. This was like the biggest challenge, getting such a massive motor to sit in this chassis and look like it was made by Toyota. That was like a very difficult task. If we had failed it, obviously that was just going to be the failure of the project. So we just had to make sure that we succeeded. And for me, this is where the problem is. When I'm working on people's vehicles, even my own cars, it's impossible to find sleep when I'm at home. It's impossible to find sleep until I've overcome the most difficult task. So when he got the car to us in September, end of September, I think by early of October, the motor was already in. It had already set in the engine bay, the brackets, everything was already made. This was done so quickly because, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep until I managed to get it to work, right? Because every time, I'm at home, I'm like at 2 a.m. Up at 2 a.m. in the morning, and I'm thinking, is this really thing going to fit? Is this thing really going to fit? Even if I'm at home and it's a weekend, I'm at home, but I'm not really at home because I'm thinking about that crazy thing that we decided to take at our workshop. So having completed that section of the build, the next thing was to actually get the engine to start. And we had two challenges. One was the wiring, was the ECU going to start? But remember, we saw all those modules, even the injector drivers, they were exposed to the weather, to the elements. Are they still in a good condition to actually run? We did open them and we saw that, there wasn't much they weren't really affected that much. It seems they were sealed well, so which was a good thing. So we knew that the electronics were going to be fine. But the challenge that we knew was that of getting the keys to everything to just work, because remember, this is a smart key. This is the generation of Toyota where they started to use smart keys. So obviously to start, it needed the smart keys, it needed the aggregation ECUs and all the other antennas and so forth, which we did not have. So what we ended up doing is we ended up reconfiguring the ECU, and this was done by, we've got a friend of ours who is in Zambia. Shout out to the guys at Kaitronics. When we just got that ECU done, the next thing that we had to do was to actually to get the wiring, to actually do the wiring. And I think it took us essentially about 6 weeks thereabout. And this is not 6 weeks working on one car. This place usually gets really busy towards the end of the year when people are trying to go for their holidays, when people are trying to, so this place really becomes so busy that in order for you to find time, we are talking about weekends. So pretty much 6 weeks over the weekends. So that would be, I would give it 6 days. 6-7 days to just get the wiring done and relocate the ECU transmission, the transmission ECU also into the dash, into the inside of the cab, because in the engine bay you can see there isn't much space really. It can only house the main ECU, but the secondary ECU could not be housed, which is one for the gearbox, could not be housed in the engine bay. So after that, wiring process was completed. We had to do our first start, and we succeeded doing that first start, and the car started right away without a problem, without a hitch. what was left there was just putting the prop shaft, mounting the pedal, the foot pedal or the accelerator pedal, because this one is a drive-by-wire, not drive-by-cable. So that was pretty much what was left to do. And when we got the prop shaft made, you know where we do get our prop shafts done. They're usually done by National Prop Shaft Center. That's where we have sent all our builds. We did have a challenge with adapting the output, the transmission's output flange with the actual prop shaft itself. So we had to get a custom piece done. And what a beautiful job it was. Sometimes that's why it's a good thing to actually do these projects, because you start to solve some of the problems that you were seeing on your own vehicles by meeting some challenges, really hard challenges that go, that really challenge. I will tell you, this is probably going to be the only Altezza in the world that's going to, when you connect your diagnostic machine, it's actually going to say Toyota Tundra or Toyota Sequoia. It will give you an option, Sequoia or Tundra. It's probably going to be the only Altezza. And I'll tell you, this motor is very heavy. We just had to change the suspension to coilovers in the front, because of just how heavy it is. When you brake, it nose dives, and you know there's a little bit of bump steer, as we saw. So we really put coilovers just to try to solve that. The other challenges, we're probably going to see them the more that it's driven, and we'll solve them as we go. It is also extremely tail happy, and I think this is a problem that the customer really wants. Yeah, I mean, essentially we are not even using full revs, just 2,000, 2,500 or just 3,000 RPMs. You're already going sideways. Most of the tests that we did when you saw us sliding and so forth, we didn't even use more than 4,000 RPM. 3,000, 3,005, you know, the thing is already blowing tires. So I don't know if I've left anything in this video, but I think I've pretty much explained how we started and finished this project over that period of time. So I do get people trying to contact me and saying, look, I've got this car and I've got this, can you do it? I've got a Jag, I want you to put this engine into a Jag, and I want you to put a turbo, I want you to put a supercharger, I want you to put flamethrowers and so forth. You know, people contact me with all crazy things that you can possibly imagine. And my usual answer for that is I don't usually take on those projects. I don't usually do that. Maybe the reason why, I'll probably explain in this video, the reason why is, if anything is not a Toyota, it's, you know, for us having put this, I knew it was going to work because it was a Toyota, right? We understand this chassis, the Altezza chassis, and this is going to cover even the Brevis is still the same chassis with the Altezza. Even the Mark II is still the, you know, cars of that era. They're quite easy. They're quite easy to get to work. You know, and parts are quite easy to come by. They're not way too expensive as you would think, as compared to anything else. I don't want to be stuck with a project that I know that, you know, whoever I'm building this project for, we end up running out of money. I don't want to do that, because at the end of the day, that project will just die without never coming to life. You understand? I want to do a project that I know is going to be completed like this one. You know, parts for this, I mean, they're quite easy to find. We know where to find them. But if we don't find them here in this country, if we don't find them in the UK, if we don't find them in Dubai, you know, those are the major places that we are probably going to find parts for this. And they're quite easy and quite cheap to get. So anything else that you're dreaming of, oh, I've got a G-Wagon, I want you to put this. Yes, it can be done. But I think the challenge that I have is most of these guys who want to do these projects, sometimes you can actually tell that, you know what, this project is going to die before it even gets anywhere because the stuff is going to be very expensive. What do you think was the cost of this build? Comment down below. Give me an estimation. If you are close, maybe I'll send you something. Maybe I'll send you a nice DPF team t-shirt try to see if you're able to predict how much it actually costs to put this thing together. So guys, thank you so much for watching. If you do have questions, if you want to know how we brought this, I mean, any other question that you may want to ask, I mean, you can drop it in the comments as well. I'll be glad to answer your questions. And let's say you're trying to replicate the same project. You want to start up this one URL for the first time, and you're having challenges wherever you are on the planet. Yeah, we've got an ECU that we have. I think we should be able to make them. I'm not sure what day in the future, but this is something that we are planning to do. But sometime in the future, we should be able to sell an ECU that you can just straight on plug onto your vehicle without the need for keys, without the need for all that other Toyota nonsense. All you have to do with that ECU, you give it power, you give it ignition, you start you get the motor to turn, maybe run the starter, and then the engine is just going to start. You don't need all that other Toyota nonsense, as I want to call it. If you want that, there's going to be a link in the description sometime in the future. Maybe not today immediately, but sometime later you're going to see that link. It's going to send you to our shop, our online shop, because we now have got an online shop, and you should be able to buy that ECU. So thank you so much for watching.